Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello and welcome to this panel session called How Will We Learn with Next Gen AI? My name is Shahab Nastar. I'm the Director of Research and Innovation at Planet Institute, and I will be your moderator for this session. I should say that this session is being recorded as an information. So by way of introduction, it was only 8 weeks ago that ChatGPT was launched and quickly took the world by storm. And, you know, to some people, it has already started disrupting many sectors, including education and learning. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. Our goal in this session is to provide insights from our panelists of how AI impacts education and learning, or will impact education and learning. As you are aware, the AI field is extremely active right now, especially when it comes to generative AI. Generative AI includes not only ChatGPT for text generation, but also things like Stable Diffusion, DALL-E, and Midjourney for image generation based on a text prompt. That said, I think in this session, we'll focus mostly on ChatGPT. All right, at this point, I'm going to introduce the panelists, starting with Kate.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm here based in Montreal. I'm the founder and CEO of Digital Moment, organization that introduces youth to ethical technologies, and we basically help the education systems advance with what we call the fourth industrial revolution. So making sure that our youth are connected with all of the learnings that they need to be well educated and engaged citizens in our century. Thanks. Nice to be here.
Excellent. Thank you, Kate. And thanks for being with us. Tina.
Hi, everyone. I'm here in Tottenham Hale in London, and I am the principal of ADA, the National College for Digital Skills. It's our mission to educate and empower the next generation of diverse digital talent. And we do that through a sixth form program, which in the UK is year 12 and 13, where all of our students study computer science, along with other courses that supplement that and complement that. And also an apprenticeship program, which is a 19+ program where students earn while they learn, rather than going to university as a separate thing, so that they've got a job as an apprentice alongside of studying for a university course. And obviously, this has hit all of our students in a big way. So super excited to talk with all of you about it today.
Thanks, Tina. Alistair?
Hi, Chahab, and hi, everybody. Tuning in today, I'm Alistair Kroll. I'm joining from Montreal, Canada, same as Kate. I run conferences and organize conversations around the intersection of technology and society. I've written 4 books on the subject, including a book called Lean Analytics, and put together courses on data science and critical thinking, mostly trying to make sense of this huge change that's happening throughout society as we move from an analog to a digital species.
Perfect. Thanks, Alistair. Ellie?
Yes. Hello. So my name is Eli Ortenberg. A while ago, I was a LPI student from the time when LPI was created, about 15 years ago. Since then, I've done a PhD in computer science in the field of complex networks, and I've been an entrepreneur in the digital industry for about 10 years. And 3 years ago, I created a new experimental school in Paris for kids aged from 6 to 13, when we try and implement state-of-the-art approaches to education that include, among other things, a very ambitious curriculum in computer science, programming, and algorithm. And I've been tinkering with different ways of leveraging new digital tools, including AI, to enhance education at school and at home.
Perfect. Thanks, Ellie. Jan?
Hello, Yann Lequin from Rennes. So I'm an assistant professor there. And in terms of research, I'm interested in how model languages, ChatGPT and the likes can be applied to biology. And I've been teaching AI and machine learning to students for the past 10 years. So I'm super happy to be here at the interface between the two fields, basically.
Excellent. Thanks so much, everybody. And before asking the panelists my first question, let me introduce briefly ChatGPT. So actually, I asked ChatGPT the question, and the answer was ChatGPT is a conversational language model developed by OpenAI. It's based on the GPT-3 architecture and is trained on a large data set of conversational text, allowing it to generate human-like responses to a wide range of prompts. ChatGPT can be used for various applications such as chatbots, language translation, and text completion. Okay, so that was the response, one of the probabilistic responses that it generated. Let me explain how it works briefly, or at least give an intuitive explanation of how it works without getting too technical. The ChatGPT architecture has essentially two layers. The first layer is what is called the large language model, and that's GPT. It's trained on a gigantic data set from the internet, and in a very simplistic way, at its core, its functionality is to be exceptional at predicting the next word. And when you predict the next word, you are a generative AI system. You essentially extend the prompt that the user has input with new words. So this first layer is incredibly good at being credible based on what it has learned on the internet. But as we know it, the internet is also inaccurate, offensive, biased, questionable, harmful, etc. So therefore, OpenAI has added a second layer. Arguably, this is a control layer. They call it reinforcement learning from human feedback, but essentially what it means is that the first layer goes to school to get an education, so to speak. What happened is that given a prompt, human operators train the model by rating its output and feeding it back into the system to the training data. So this is a little bit like educating the underlying model on correct and incorrect, but also on okay versus harmful, good versus bad, etc. However, this is all done as a black box without us having access to who does this, what are the values or the principles used. So this second layer sort of mitigates the mistakes and wild answers of the first layer. And there you have it. That's ChatGPT, and with the rather simple idea, the results are impressive and actually go way beyond predicting the next word. These are initial steps. These are initial steps of the technology, and this kind of technology is improving extremely fast, obviously. Which leads me to my first question to the panel. Your thoughts on generative AI. Is it a transformative technology? Alistair?
Yes, is the short answer. I think the reality is that we've had two trends that are moving forward quickly here. One is, if you think about computer programming 100 years ago, you carried a stack of punched cards across the quad to the mainframe at 2 in the morning, because that was when you could get time. Computing was scarce, human time was abundant. There's a famous line that we landed on the moon with the computing power of the speak and spell computer. Today, my smartphone's calculator, 99.9% of the computing power when I use that calculator is used to make it easy for me to use the calculator, to make the buttons look like they've been tapped, to make them colorful and so on, to make the fonts big. Tiny, tiny fraction is used to do the math. So we have swung the user interface work from the human to the machine. instead of us flipping switches, we've now gotten to a point where I can express something in plain English and the machine will understand it. And that, I think, we're so obsessed with how cool the answers are, we've kind of failed to notice that the computer is doing all the work in meeting us. We no longer have to speak computer, it speaks human. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the sum of all human history has been the consolidation and democratization of learned information. So once upon a time, information was stored and captured by guilds. Then it was controlled by the church and those who could read. Then it was sort of in the famous libraries. But over time, it became more and more democratized. And today, Crash Course, for example, which is an online learning streaming channel from YouTube, Crash Course has been credited by millions of American kids as the only reason they finished high school because of crumbling educational systems. This week, they announced a program where, in conjunction with Google, you can go and get university credits for completing these Crash Course videos. Because once upon a time, the best book was in the Library of Alexandria, and you would travel across countries to meet the best teacher. And then we democratized learning by putting pretty good teachers in each village. We sent a nerd off to get training and brought them back, and they taught physics. That's reverse. So two reversals here. The reversal where the human no longer has to do the work to be understood. It's the computer doing it. And the reversal where the content to learn from is no longer scarce. It is abundant. Those two things are tectonic shifts that generative AI, we talk about the generation, but it's actually the distribution and democratization of the information on which it is trained and the ease with which that can be accessed that are transformative.
Excellent. Thanks, Alistair. Ellie, maybe your thoughts on this?
Yes. So the core idea behind generative technology and generative AI is relatively simple. You find patterns and then you generate data that fits this pattern. So this idea is not new by itself. When you roll dice, basically, you are generating a single data point that fits the pattern, a number from 1 to 6 with approximately equivalent probabilities. And methods for generating data based on patterns have existed for centuries. And in the digital age, they have been everywhere. They are used extensively for any kind of simulation, for science, but also for entertainment in computer games, for example. So in and by itself, generative technology is not new. What's new is how good current models are at generating text specifically, matching a given pattern. The complexity and breadth of such patterns we are able to find by basically feeding the entire internet into a language model. And then, and I think that took many by surprise, is the breadth of applications for very good text generating models. That is a number and diversity of tasks that can be designed and expressed as a text generating task, from poetry to code to speeches to law to textbook to maths exercises and much more. So in a way, this is really a new step and a very important step because we now have a model that is generic enough and specific enough to be able to complete very specific and general tasks. So now ChatGPT as an application of generative AI. I fully subscribe to Alistair's story about our access to knowledge. How millennia ago, when you wanted to have an answer to a question, you would go to a witch doctor or shaman or priest or whatever. And then later, if you knew how to read, you would consult a sacred text to access truth. Then maybe you would access an encyclopedia, and in more modern times, you would browse a library. Then at the digital age, you would access reference websites and online encyclopedias and search engine. And in a way, ChatGPT and similar technologies are merely a new step in this dynamic of easier access to knowledge. However, the way we interact with ChatGPT to generate music and poetry reminds me of a quote in an otherwise very questionable movie adaptation of Asimov's I, Robot from 2004. At one point, the main human character would mock a robot as a mindless machine and tell them something like, your robot would never be able to write a Beethoven symphony or write a Shakespeare sonnet. And the robot would reply, well, can you? Now the robots can actually generate something very close to a Beethoven symphony or a Shakespeare sonnet, but that doesn't mean that only because information is easier to access, information will actually be accessed more. Otherwise, fake news wouldn't spread, and we don't have all kind of challenges that we have with learning and teaching. So having this new technology open the realm of possibilities, but tech alone is only a relatively small piece of the picture, and people will also have to learn how to use it if they are to leverage it in a transformative way.
Thanks, Ellie. That was awesome. Jan, your thoughts on the technology?
Well, I mean, I agree with everything that has been said, and something that I like as well is that somehow generative AI is also redefining the needed skills in our society, right? Because the same way we've had, I mean, calculators were mentioned, right? And the same way our parents used to know how to compute square root of a number by hand, I never had to learn that because I had a calculator that was doing that. And we can argue whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. But the thing is, with generative AI, the realm of possibilities that can be outsourced to the AI has been multiplied expensively, right? Because now I'm terrible at drawing, and if I have to generate a drawing for my courses, then I can ask AI to generate drawings, variations, and then I can play around with prompts and get the drawings I need. And so now, to me, it's also asking the questions of what do we lose if we ask AI to generate stuff instead of us? And what could we gain by freeing time and having access to these new kind of skills that would take years to master if I were to learn drawing? And I guess we'll talk about education implications on this. But to me, it's super huge because, for instance, taking the summary of a text, we used to grade this for students as a proxy of, did they understand the material, the original material? And if they can sum this up properly, then as a proxy, we guess they understood correctly. But now that we have AI that can generate these summaries for us, or I mean for the students very, very effectively, now the question comes, should we still teach them how to summarize a text? What do we lose if we stop teaching these kind of things? And to me, this is spreading in the whole, society, because we can leverage generative AI to do stuff instead of us. So, when should we use it? When should we use it but still teach the skills? And, what do we gain? What do we lose from that? To me, this is the main new things with generation, because AI have been there to help us doing some things, but the way it can generate new things, to me, it opens a bunch of questions as well.
Many thanks, Jan. Kate, your thoughts?
Yeah, and I agree with everything everyone's been saying here. I think just to put all of this in context, this absolutely is super, changing the way that we'll be working in education and teaching. But a reminder of there are still 4 billion people in the world who do not have access to the internet. So we are still a very small, there's still a lot of work to do to make this transformative for everybody in society who will be able to use this. Also, those who are feeding these machines with data and using data and all the internet information is very limited perspective of those who have been feeding it over the decades. So it's still got a lot of work to do. It's interesting to see the hype around ChatGPT, because AI in education has been in education for decades, as has been mentioned. And I think this point in time and having media involved and all these different stakeholders involved in this awareness is key to the transformation of education. And if you look back into any of the industrial revolutions in history, there are key moments where education has had to shift. And we have not shifted since the last industrial revolution. Our teachers are still talking down to our students and getting them to absorb lots of information. And we define being smart, and we grade being smart by how well you've memorized, how well you've taken all of that information. That's going to change. It doesn't matter if you can memorize huge amounts of content anymore. Where are the street smart skills? How is this AI technology going to make our kids learning to communicate, to collaborate, to build those critical thinking skills? So I think it's, I think this technology coming in at this point is really, really important for society as a whole, because it's getting us to have these conversations at an early stage, because, moving in further into the 21st century, this is going to become even more powerful. So it's not new. There's been lots of people working in this space for many years. I worry about those left behind and the gap that we're building and growing. So I think it's an important time to think and reflect on what has happened in history, what's happened in the past, so that we don't learn, so we can learn from those mistakes.
That was great. Thanks, Kate. And I see that the chat room is quite active, and the panelists are also participating. That's great. Tina, over to you, last but not least.
Thanks. So for me, one of the key markers of the transformative nature of this is the quick take up, right? I mean, everybody's talking about it. Literally my hairdresser was talking about it, and his wife was using it, and everyone and their dog, and that's a real shift, right? The students are using it. We're almost on the back foot with this. They're using it already. We haven't even decided what it means for us or how we're going to engage with it. And, to Jan's point about the skills, right? It's kind of the same. We've had these discussions over and over again, but it's becoming more and more in our face, like map reading skills, for example. There's another classic one, like, do we actually need them? Are we losing out as human beings if we don't have these skills? Or are we just replacing them with other skills? And, what Alice just said about the user interface, the sort of user experience of it, if this is people's experience of how to interact with the sum of knowledge on the internet, imagine how empowering that is. It's hugely, it's this huge, amazing force. But then, to Kate's point, what about the people who don't have access, aren't using it? And I've already posed this to my students. I said, who is actually using this already? And a couple of hands went up, and I said, the rest of you're falling behind already. Like, these guys are at an advantage to you. So you better get onto this. And this is before we've really, we're having really great discussions with the students about how transformative it is. And, we need to keep having those conversations. So, it doesn't address the really important skills of, as people have mentioned, collaboration, your own, let's say, verbal communication, or things like resilience, or, that sort of thing. But, it's a great opportunity to shake up education as we know it. Having just said that about 2 years ago with COVID, this was going to change everything and change how we assess, and it actually hasn't changed anything in the UK. I think this one will, though.
Thanks, Tina. This reminds me of the quote by Thomas Edison in 1913. Our school system will be completely changed in the next 10 years, he used to say. But this time it's true, hopefully, and we look forward to it. We already started talking about this, but the consequence on education systems. Some people ignore the disruption. That won't do it, probably. Some places like New York City, Australia, Sciences Po Paris are banning the system for the use of ChatGPT. Some others are looking forward to plagiarism software. I tried one of them. It simply didn't work at all, but let's see. But what do you guys think about it? Probably not the solution to be in denial. So how how can education systems embrace AI, and especially generative AI? And does it change their mission statement? And what's the way forward, generally speaking? Maybe we start with Ellie. Ellie, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. So when we introduced ChatGPT to teachers in our school, there were 3 reactions: the ones who didn't care, the one who loved it, and the one who hated it. I think the one who hated it were maybe a bit afraid or didn't really understand, and pretty much, like probably the church would freak out that people could actually read the Bible because they could understand that maybe something wasn't right. So I think that will evolve rapidly towards accepting and embracing this new technology once we're able to overcome specific challenges that we have. But more broadly speaking, when thinking about generative AI and technologies such as ChatGPT, and then the opportunities they present for education. So already today, whatever your background and job is, having some level of technical skill is undeniably useful. Whether you're an accountant, a musician, a teacher, or a baker, if you know how to use, if you know how to properly use a search engine, and maybe you know some Python, you have a significant advantage over those who don't, and that's already here today. But given the breadth and depth of generative AI applications, it is easy to assume that virtually all industries and all occupations will be impacted in one way or another. Besides, algorithm and AI are already such a fundamental component of the world, of how the world works, that it is inconceivable that students don't get proper education about computer science and AI. So learning about algorithm, AI, and at least basic computer science literacy is at least as important as, and realistically even more than, say, learning calculus or Newtonian mechanics. Sorry. And besides learning about AI and computer science, generative AI also presents new opportunities on a meta level for teaching and learning. Specifically, it could be a great tool to deliver knowledge adaptively to a learner, depending on their unique profile. So I've tried prompts with students with some level of success. For example, explain algebraic topology using football, or explain thermodynamics using World of Warcraft. Sometimes that doesn't work, but sometimes it does work surprisingly well. And more broadly, we can already imagine tools that will adaptively give examples or adjust the scope or the depth of explanation about a topic they are reading online. And a specific use case for this accessibility opportunity is generative AI as assistive technologies for kids struggling with difficulties such as specific learning disorder, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorders, or autism spectrum disorders. There is already very good assistive technologies that exist, but there are very promising opportunities to leverage generative AI for more inclusive education and new form of assistive technologies.
Excellent. Jan, at the university, what is your experience?
I mean, so we, as I think Tina was saying, so we teachers are in the middle of discussing, how should we adjust where students have already, for some of them, taken the tool and start playing with it. So we need to, there's this arms race, right? I mean, in a Pacific way, right? But we have to catch up very fast. And to me, what is clear is that if we don't change the grading process for some courses, we will not be evaluating what we want to evaluate, because as I was saying before, there are many things where we ask students to produce something, and the production to us is a proxy of the thinking process behind it. But now it's possible to leverage AI to produce instead of the students in a way, then this proxy is not valid anymore. So we have to rethink a way to evaluate better the process of producing and not just the production itself. And that could be, and probably we'll discuss this later on, but it could be producing openly with ChatGPT, but asking the students the sequence of prompts, for instance, or there are many ways to do this, but we have to rethink not just the generation, but the whole thinking process. And I also agree with what Ellie was saying. This ChatGPT could also be a very nice tool for students who have difficulty to take notes or to write, and by just taking scraps of notes and asking ChatGPT to reformat this, to complete this, to correct the grammatical structure, because some of them, it's still an issue even at the university for different reasons. So this could be a super powerful tool to help students, basically learn better as well. And I also agree on the fact that we need to teach a little bit, at least, the how it works, because as it's going to be everywhere in everyday life, and many decisions will be taken away from us, and given to an AI or to models, and it's already the case in many different areas of the society. So I think it's mandatory that everyone has at least rough understanding of what's going on, because else the gap between those who know and those who use it and those who don't know and don't use it will widen even further. And finally, now from the teacher perspective, I think it's also very nice. I've been seeing many examples, and probably you've seen that already, of people asking ChatGPT to provide a detailed program how to learn how to code in Python, for instance. Like, give me a month program of how to learn in Python, and then give me the detail of the first week, of the first day, and even of the first hour. And then it generates stuff. Sometimes it's generic, but sometimes it's very accurate. And as well, you said it already earlier. I think the interesting part is that you have these large language models that are generic, and then you specify them on specific tasks. Could be, with this human feedback, but it could also be on specific subtasks. And I think the day we have a more open code, because OpenAI, we can discuss it a bit later. Not open as we should think with the words, but the time we have a language model that is really open, then it's open for fine-tuning for education and research. And when we have access to this, then we can specifically design the prompts, correct it for specific education needs, and I think it will even gain a level of being able to teach even better. And I'll stop here for now.
Many thanks, Jan. Kate, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And this is really where I think about the education systems. In Canada, we have 13 ministries of education. We don't have actual federal leadership in this country, so it's very complicated. And where do you begin with something like this? I think I always go right back down to the basics of what does education mean? Our kids are in school for 20 plus years. Why? I think it's important that every educator has a definition and understanding of what it means for them, and then building from that. And I think from my perspective, it's to make sure that we've got engaged citizens who can create and communicate socially, economically, and now environmentally in the world around them. And the word communication is key. And again, going back into the history, why do we teach our kids to read and write? It's because it's a form of communication that was created. And now our technologies, our technologies, is another tool of where our kids need to understand how this works. So why are we not teaching our kids how AI works, the ethical implications of artificial intelligence? And in 2018, we launched a project called Digital 2030 to align the education of artificial intelligence, algorithms, and data to the Sustainable Development Goals. The idea, and still we've almost reached 1 million youth in our country and 162 countries around the world, so we're excited to see the engagement of it, but they need to understand how it works. And so to what the other panelists are saying, to use it is one thing, but to understand how it works is so key. And that has to be part of the education of our youth, because if they don't understand how this works, then they are just consumers again, and they are just being fed and not being able to engage critically. So there's a big role that we have to do within the education system. So our teachers need to be trained, our kids need to be trained, and this needs to be brought into curricula. Given that it takes about 10 years for any turnover of a curriculum in our country, at least in Canada, there's a lot of work to do. I started this organization, Digital Moment, over 10 years ago, and we still are inching forward to bringing digital skills into classrooms across the country. So there's so much work to do. I do think, again, this is a moment that will accelerate, similar to the pandemic. We had almost 1 billion people jump onto the internet due to the pandemic, and in our country and around the world, we saw the adoption of technology in classrooms so quickly because it was a necessity. I think this, with ChatGPT and these other tools that are coming in, this is becoming a necessity that's going to force change again. So I'm excited to see how this adapts and changes the education systems, but it will need a multi-stakeholder approach, making sure that it's ethical, that it's responsible, in particular for our youth who are using these tools and giving their data and using data And in Canada, and I know Europe's doing some great work in terms of data policy and protection for youth, but it's still so much work to be done. So, I think inching quicker, but not accelerating too fast, and bringing these into the school systems is key. But lots of work to do.
Thanks, Kate. I think Alistair wants to react to what Kate was saying. Alistair?
Well, actually, to a lot of things. There's some great thoughts summarized here. So, one of the things I find is we're always guilty of is thinking about the current world using the current lens. It's very hard for humans to look at the world through a new lens. Foucault talked about a singularity as a moment where you can't see what's on the other side. Not the Ray Kurzweil AI singularity, but the sort of philosophical singularity. So I like to use a couple of tools to think about that future. There's a guy named Herbert Simon who is a brilliant, ironically, computer science and artificial intelligence person, but also economist, philosopher. And in the 70s, when everybody was talking about the information economy, he said, look, you're all wrong. Economies are designed and built around what's scarce. Information is abundant. We have to ask ourselves, what does information consume? And what information consumes is our attention. He said, we are in the attention economy. Like, he's the guy that coined attention economy in the 1970s. And when you go on Facebook, you are literally paying with your attention, right? We pay attention. It's a currency. That's why we are incented by these thirst traps of dopamine to spend a quarter of our lives on social platforms. So, if you buy into that definition, we are now in a world where I think we're leaving the attention economy. And I'll explain what I mean by that, because I think I know what the next economy is going to be. Yan had a great point. He said we test understanding by asking for summarization, right? So we keep saying, oh, an AI can summarize a book, so the person won't read a book. Well, yeah, the question we should be asking ourselves, if we're thinking weirdly, is why would we read a book when there's a personal agent that can summarize the information in a way that works better for us to learn? The New York City School of One program showed that by giving students tailored courses, you could take a student in the lower quartile of math and move them to the top decile in 3 months. Now, sadly, because of New York unions and so on, this program was not greatly expanded on, but they're still doing it, and it works really well. And they've taken kids and they've shown them amazing kind of math models. So you have personalized training, and if you've ever read Neil Stephenson's The Diamond Age, the Young Ladies Illustrated Primer, is this device that is constantly giving someone tailored information necessary for when they need it. So the question we're asking here, how do we test whether someone read the book, ignores the possibility that books are obsolete because tailored summarization is new. I'm just saying I want to think weirdly. So what Yan said is, how do we test understanding when we can no longer use ability to summarize as understanding, because summarization became free, right? You can't test for summarization because a personalized summary is now free. Just to recognize that what GPT did is give us a personalized summary for free, tailored to us based on world knowledge. So now, what do you do with a summary? Let's say you are that student and you work in a Smith for 10 years as an intern or a guild, a guild employee. You learn how to work the bellows, you learn how to forge the steel. Eventually, you make swords or plowshares. You have gone from summarization to action. The reason for summarizing something is to act on it, right? The reason to understand the financial market is to make a trade. The reason to learn how to build a house is to build a house. So I think we are now going to test based on our ability to act upon the knowledge we have. How long does it take me to do the task that I claim to know? How long does it take me to run the chemistry experiment I'm supposed to have read about? How long does it take me to produce an outcome in the physical world? And how well does that match the hypothesis I formed? All right, I'm going to say, okay, you've learned these skills. Can you do the thing? Which means that education in the future is simulation. Give me a simulation where I can try these ideas out and see if it works. Testing. Let me do this over and over again in a safe environment where I can see if the thing is doing what it wants. And then when the test works well enough, pushing to production. Now, pushing to production if you're a software engineer is a simple concept. I got the code, it works, I press a button, other people can use it. Pushing to production if you're a smith is making a sword. So the future of education is simulating, testing, and pushing to production. Information consumed our attention and gave us the attention economy. Generative AI is able to attend to a thing. To attend means to pay attention to something, right? Generative AI is able to attend to the sum of human knowledge. Now that a machine can attend to something, we are going to be in the action economy. How well can a human produce the outcome based on their summary? And is that outcome better than expected? If so, that's an innovation which will then be subsumed back into the algorithm. I think we're moving into the action economy. I know that sounds weird, like actions have always happened, but if the digital world got free and ideas were cohered, now that we have information, like if information gives us the attention economy, then free attention, which is what GPT does, gives us an action economy. Because what's scarce is people who can act on the attention that they've been given, the training they've been given. So that's kind of my rant on the thing, but I think the future of education is attention turned into action.
Kate has raised her hand. Kate?
Yeah, I just want to jump in quickly, and it'll be very, very quick. And that's what our classroom should look like, Alistair. Action. And we've gone from the top down, passing on information is no longer needed. Our kids need to test, they need to iterate, they need hands-on learning, they need to communicate and collaborate with each other. So as we're seeing the economy shift, and you've seen this again in the history, as the economic structures shift, so does the education system shift. So just wanted to add that because that's what our classrooms need to look like.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. Tina, over to you.
I think that's a perfect spot for me to come in because I'm going to change my answer straight away and just tell you about what we do here at ADA because it's a perfect example of that. So this is exactly what to educate and empower the next generation of diverse digital talent looks like here. So first of all of the students do computer science, but they do it through a qualification, which in the UK is called a BTEC. It's a vocational qualification. So our year 13's second year of sixth form are just starting a unit called the impact of computing. And it's an open forum to look at latest emerging technologies. So guess what? We're talking about ChatGPT and other generative AI. So we don't have to wait for curriculum change because the qualification we've chosen allows us to talk about these things. So last year we were talking about the metaverse. We've been talking, we talked about drone delivery, self-service checkout, that kind of thing. So it's whatever the latest sort of hot topic, and the more controversial, the better. It also requires students to do an actual project in that area. So they're going to have to they have to plan an implementation. So what if a school decides to chuck out whatever they were doing before and use ChatGPT for tutoring, teaching, whatever. So it makes them think about these things and it makes them look at the risks, the issues, the impacts, the benefits, and those impacts are wider than just on the organization. They're also society. So environmental impacts. So what are the environmental impacts of using this technology? Because of course, if everyone's going to start using it, this thing has to be running on servers somewhere, we need a phone or whatever device, et cetera, et cetera. So it really starts making them think about the bigger picture. Then the other aspect to what we do is what we call our industry projects. And today, all of our year 12s, it's a really nice quiet day here in the college, because all the year 12s are down at Bank of America near St. Paul's in the City of London, presenting. They've been working for the past 2 days on projects in teams, collaboratively, to develop an infographic, and they're presenting it to judges at Bank of America. So that's exactly what we do. So in some ways, it's not going to disrupt what we do here too much. And that's why I really want to use it as a tool. And of course, in some ways here, we're also preaching to the choir. This is exactly what our students love to play with, love to learn about. And I really hope that they're going to be the ones who create these tools, not just be the passive users of those tools, when they create them, that they have an understanding of those wider impacts, the ethics, the legalities, all of that kind of thing. So, I'm really, this excited me more in terms of like changes in education and just myself personally, because I love learning. I'm curious about everything. This has made me more curious about the change in tech than anything has for a long time. Like all of those other, like metaverse, whatever. But this is super interesting. And then just another thing that's happened in the UK in the last week is that UCAS, the University Admission Service here, has announced that they're dropping the requirement for what is called a personal statement in university applications. So this is a page-long, 4,000 character statement that students have to make, I love computer science, please give me a place on your course. They really struggle with it, they hate it. Of course, universities probably read through, admissions tutors read through millions of really bad ones, some really good ones as well. But of course, I have to think that the advent of ChatGPT is something that has made them push the button and say, you know what, because all they're going to get next year, they're going to have one more year of this, is, ChatGPT generated personal statements. So yeah, good luck to you, UCAS. You're probably going to have better essays to read for a year at least. That's me.
Thanks. We are about halfway through our session here, and the next topic I'd like us to talk about is the pitfalls of AI, of especially generative AI in learning and education. And I want to start this section by a short quote on the Gell-Mann amnesia effect. And so this quote is the following. I don't know, some people seem to know it. You open the newspaper to an article on some subject you know well. You read the article and see the journalist has absolutely no understanding of the facts or the issues. You then turn the page and read as if the rest of the newspaper was somehow more accurate. And this is just to introduce the topic we're going to talk about now, which is factual information. As we've already experienced in the past 8 weeks, ChatGPT is not so good at factual information. It's unreliable. It has an inconsistent accuracy in a confident tone, sometimes shallow answers with good grammar, no link to source, so it cannot be a reference like Wikipedia is, and it simply may perpetuate misinformation. What are some of your thoughts on this? And please raise your hand, otherwise I'm going to hand it over to Jan to begin with. Jan?
Yep. So probably this will also be mixed with ethics and things that we'll discuss afterwards. But at least one of the pitfalls I already mentioned a little bit is basically if we outsource some of the skills to ChatGPT and generative AI, the question is, do we learn more than just the output in the process? And I really love Alistair's points of actually moving beyond evaluating the product, but evaluating what you can do with the product, whatever it is. In the end, I think that's very important. The pitfalls, I mean, there are for teachers and for students, right? And for teachers, there's also a huge question, because I've tried it with a lot of introductory lessons I could give in undergrad, and actually I can very easily ask ChatGPT to generate, quite generic introductions to many subjects I would teach in undergrad. And honestly, that's at least as good as what I've been writing or giving the students as material. And so it's also lead us to think of what is the role of teachers in undergrad. And I think one of the pitfalls would be the temptation to replace teachers by these generative AI and things. And we know that people come to the university not just for the material, but for the interactions and for what teachers can bring beyond just the teaching part. And I think one of the pitfalls is not recognizing these added values of the teacher, or I don't know what to phrase that, is that we need to think right now of how to focus more on this added value, given that part of the job that is producing content is actually, part of it can be fully outsourced. And then there are all the pitfalls that you mentioned as well, that the production of ChatGPT in itself is based on the corpus it has been trained onto, and from the instruction that have been given at the second layer that you beautifully described. And this depends on who did that. And this is completely, in the documentation, they tell you the process, but they don't tell you who have been asked, and they don't provide much examples or control on these. And this as well could lead, and I've seen the examples when I played with ChatGPT myself, if you go more and more specific on different technical topics, ChatGPT can sometimes inverse some answers, and in a very confident tone. And you have to be able to take a look and say, okay, this part probably is wrong, and then you can ask ChatGPT, oh, this part I think is wrong, can you check? And then it takes a while, but usually it tells, oh yeah, my bad, and then it explains you why you were right to point it out. But for students that are discovering a field, this might be a huge caveat. So this as well is kind of the pitfalls that I wanted to mention. And then there are all the ethics, but we'll keep this for probably later on in the conversation.
Thanks, Jan. Tina, I think you have some insight.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that as well. Like, it's that if you already know a lot about a topic, you can ask good questions. You know what you don't know. You pick up when something's slightly a bit off, or you don't understand it, so you delve more, and then you can find out if it's correct or not. It's a great tool, but like my students are definitely not there, and also their filter for, or let's say their standards are maybe a bit lower as well. Like they're like, that looks like a good answer. Good enough, I've done my work, there we go. So really teaching them to use, like, how they should use it. So I used it like a student would use it, and then I critiqued the answers. And it's almost like it's a bit like maths, right? Show you're working. That's what we need to do. Use ChatGPT, show you're working. So I asked it for 4 ways to enhance teaching and learning. And one of the ways it said was to automatically grade multiple choice questions. So I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I can already do that. Like, that's already exists. I've done that with Google Forms or with other kind of quiz software. Is that all you've got? So, I kind of interacted with it like that. But I think one big pitfall for students, and maybe not such aware digital users, is this, it becomes a person. It gets asked opinions. I know there's some checks built in where it sort of pushes back with that kind of thing. But one of the things I've insisted that students refer to it as it, not they. I had quite a lot of students going, yeah, and then they tell me, as if there's like, a field of experts behind that coming up with those answers. But that sort of, if it starts going into that, give me advice sort of thing. In terms of the sources, I don't know about the rest of you, but I've had it generate sources. So I was working with our psychology teacher and showing him how it worked, and it did mention, what the source of the information was in terms of the psychologist and the study. It didn't actually source a paper or anything. And then for another thing that I did, I asked it to use Harvard referencing to reference the facts that it used. And it actually did reference the Office of National Statistics here in the UK, and it had proper Harvard referencing at the end. So it doesn't give sources, it doesn't give references. I don't think that's quite, I'm not sure how it works. I'd need to do more work. Maybe somebody else has more information there.
Well, famously, it can hallucinate some of the sources. If you insist on having the sources, it will provide them. But then you don't know which is which and which one you can trust. So it needs a double check after that.
Yeah, that's even, I suppose that's even worse than citing. Like I have had one example where it said, oh, I didn't source anything, I just know this stuff. It literally said something like that. It's a common fact. Not so sure about that.
Thank you, Tina. I think Alistair wanted to take the floor.
Yeah, so I wanted to, first of all, I think we have a lot of issues with how the responses come back, and I'll talk about those in a second. But I want to point out something about how good it is at understanding us. There's a famous puzzle generated by a professor named Terry Winograd, who is a professor of AI and computer science at Stanford. And he has something called Winograd's dilemma. So I'm going to read you two sentences. The first sentence: the committee denied the group a parade permit because they advocated violence. Everybody knows what I just said, right? The committee denied the group a parade permit because they advocated violence. Who does they refer to in that sentence?
The parade group.
Okay, next sentence. The committee denied the group a parade permit because they feared violence. Who does they refer to in that sentence?
The committee.
Right. We all know that as humans because we are able to make sense of the underlying meaning. All I did was advocated, switched to feared, but your context of what parade groups tend to do and what committees tend to do allowed you to interpret that sentence. This has been for a long time the classic example of AI is not like humans because it doesn't understand what's going on in the background, right? When you read stuff about semantics and so on, there's a huge difference between understandability and grammatical correctness. This is called co-indexing, highly dependent on the sentence. So I was reading an article about this by Freddie DeBoer, who asked, in the sentence, the committee denied the group to a parade permit because they advocated violence. Who is they referring to? And ChatGPT said, they is referring to the group that applied for the parade permit. It implies that the committee made the decision to deny the permit because the group that had applied for it advocated for violence in their view or actions. And then he asked the same question about the other one. In the sentence, the committee denied the group a parade permit because they feared violence. The word they refers to the committee members. It implies the committee denied the permit to the group based on the fear that their parade could lead to violence or harm. That is a bleeping good answer, probably better than most high school students could explain, from ChatGPT. That is astonishing. Like, I think any of us would give that student 100% for the semantic interpretation. In fact, it actually said, it is used as the subject pronoun to refer to the group of people who were part of the committee that was responsible for denying the permit. I'd give that student an A, right? That's not rote learning. That's not, I got the facts. That is an interpretation. And then you go, well, how did it get so right? Well, probably because somebody somewhere on the internet wrote about Winograd's dilemma, right? It's summarizing human knowledge, but we should not underestimate the power of summarizing human knowledge. So I think that there's a very important aspect to this, which is that we don't know how to get more specific about search than this stuff does. But we haven't talked about an important aspect of this, which is the business model. Today, we expect content for free. We expect YouTube videos for free in return for ads. We expect search results for free in return for click-throughs. The entire fabric of the internet, in fact, the entire fabric of communication in the form of broadcast television and broadcast radio and search, we expect it for free. Google and Microsoft are planning on making these tools part of their subscription paid services. For B2B, totally understand that you will have a tool built into your algorithm that will be paid for, that will be built into your tools and will be paid for, and you'll be paying money for them. Adobe already does this with generative AI. The challenge here is the same one we have with news. The truth is behind a paywall. The falsehoods are free. When you search for the internet, you search the internet for results, you get fake news for free, and the truth is behind a paywall. We are about to get into a world where people want ChatGPT for free. Remember, we've only ever tried it in beta, but it costs roughly 8 cents a query. Like, OpenAI is burning money to run this stuff. When ChatGPT becomes free, we don't have a business model for it. There's a business model for search because when you click on a link, I can charge the person I'm sending you to. But when ChatGPT gives me a summary, how do I bill for that summary? The only way I'm going to bill for that summary is by product placement. I'm going to say, oh, how to bake a cookie. Well, here are the Toll House cookie links. And so all of a sudden you have a feedback loop where the people who make free ChatGPT responses populate them with content that is in alignment with their business goals of selling click-through links and revenue for advertising, not necessarily the truth. And so I think we're going to see a huge split between paid and free to everyone ChatGPT that is going to further create a gulf in society between the haves and the have-nots. If I can pay for stuff, I get good summaries backed by actual research. If I have free stuff, I get bad summaries polluted by the marketing interests of the companies that are advertising for it. I don't think we are talking enough about that consequence.
Thanks, Alistair. We need to hurry up a little bit, and I see that Jan has raised his hand. Jan?
Yeah, extremely quickly, I really love what Alistair was saying about the sentence and recognizing the words. Actually, one of the big breakthrough in AI over the past 10, 20 years is how to adapt the underlying architectures to the type of data it's using. And for sentences, it's called the attention mechanism. I don't know how the audience is familiar with what's behind, but you should have a look at it. And actually, one of the big key things is that for the new ways, the new kind of structured information we want to tackle, if you find the right way to handle information, then you will go leaps and bounds in terms of complexity and what you can do with it. And with text, it's and with images now is getting better and better with this.
Great. Ellie, you
Yes.
want to add something to this?
Yes, I'll be quick. So first, I really enjoy and agree with Alistair's striking example. I would slightly disagree that only fake news are freely accessible and truth is behind paywall. I believe one of the greatest achievements of mankind as a whole is Wikipedia, and it's free, and it's for the overwhelming part truthful and trustworthy. So I would be maybe slightly less pessimistic than Alistair suggested. However, and you mentioned it, Shahab, one common problem with generative technology that's sometimes called hallucinating is when the algorithm generates absurd results with the same confidence than they would for genuine results. So it can generate Shakespeare quotes about space travel and quantum mechanics, or nonsensical mathematical proof that are really nonsensical, but that look genuine, and the algorithm is unable to tell. And there is virtually no way of knowing whether it's hallucinating or not unless you already know the answer to the question you ask. Some say it can be overcome with some fine tuning. Some say it's a fundamental difficulties for which we don't have any solution, and we won't have with the foreseeable state of technology. But in any event, that means that using generative algorithm for generating ground truth cannot be left unsupervised, and at this point still requires significant oversight and vigilance. However, they can already be used as what someone I discussed with called a shitty first draft generator, meaning you generate a first iteration of a document and you have an expert review it. 90% will be correct, 10% will be absurd and nonsensical, and will fix the 10%, and it will still be probably 10 to 100 times faster to fix this draft than to invent it from scratch. You may be familiar with a colloquial law named Cunningham's law that says the best way to get the right answer on the internet is not to ask a question, is to post a wrong answer. So my view on that I've experimented in a project is that we can leverage ChatGPT in conjunction with Cunningham's law as a new and efficient approach to expert knowledge crowdsourcing by generating approximately right answers with something very wrong inside, and ask experts to fix it. I actually tried that in a project I'm working on mental health, where we have to generate guides on mental health for teachers. It's a rather complex topic, and basically we are trying to create a teacher textbook about mental health. There is a tremendous amount of content to create. So to make this easier, and because we don't have access to millions of psychiatrists helping us write the guides, we have generated a first iteration of around 120 guides. Some were absolutely correct, some were blatantly wrong, but this illustrates that we can help generative AI to not create from scratch something that we could not create before, but create much more quickly and much more efficiently. And I believe this is probably a promising direction that kind of sidesteps some of the pitfalls we have discussed, including the hallucination problem. Sorry.
Many thanks, Eli. I see a question from Francois in the chat. Can a public service or Wikipedia model help avoid what Alistair just said? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know much about
Yeah.
it, but maybe someone else here does. But, you know, I mean, there are open source versions. There's Bloom, which I'm not sure if it does the same sort of thing, if it's got the same power, but that you could access that. I mean, just because, as Jan's already mentioned, you know, OpenAI, not very open, but there will be the open source version or the free version, or like, you know, I mean, there's the non-proprietary version of this, because it's not, if they can do it, you know, other people can do it and club together. And, you know, Hugging Face has done that with Bloom. I haven't played with that myself. So that's, you know, I need to do that next, because that will be a big thing. You know, if this becomes paid for or advertised or something like that, that's going to be a real big problem for us. Our students tend to come from disadvantaged backgrounds, and I don't need anything that is going to, you know, create more of a disadvantage. So I would look for the free version, the open source version, that sort of thing.
Thanks, Tina. Indeed, Bloom is an open source model that is emerging in public research. I will put the link in the chat in a while. But let's move on here. There's a lot of activity in the chat room. Panelists, please feel free to answer the questions over there. And the next big chunk that we have, and we don't have a lot of time ahead of us, is ethics. And that is a big chunk indeed. We have touched upon it here and there. But essentially, what are your thoughts on the ethical issues? And we've had some questions in the chat. There's this question of ChatGPT being closed source and a black box, trained on biased data, manipulative and flooding the internet with inaccurate information, potentially. There was an article in Time earlier last week about it relying on human labor in the global south. That is damaging and exploitative, and there has been litigations, notably I think Getty Images suing Stability.ai because images were scraped from their website without consent, etc., etc., etc. So ethics, here's the time we're going to speak about ethics, and I think Jan will start.
All right, so I'm going to start with a subpart, and the others will have many things to add, but I wanted to emphasize the resources it needs to train the model, and to basically the amount of text and the amount of computing powers and the amount of human labeling that needs to be entered into the system to produce the output model. And this is not affordable for everyone, for every company, or for every country, or for every school, obviously. And so it creates basically a wall behind, you know, and you have some that can afford this kind of computing power and have the money to do so, and those who cannot afford it. And so to link with what we previously just said, I think there is a real need to have a decent, open, really open ChatGPT or large language models that people can build on as a collective. Else, if this is only the property of a small amount of people or a company, we are open to all the kind of, what Alistair said, or, the way that the gap will widen even more. And in the context also of, of scarcity, in a sense that, should we put resources to train a new model that would take, hours and hours of computing time, of energy, of resources, in a world where, we have probably to think about better of how to use all this energy as well. So there is, to me, there's this question of, everyone cannot do it, so we should provide a model that is available to everyone. And at the same time, we should also wonder, is it worth the race of getting the next model, GPT-4, 5, 6, 7, knowing that each time it gets better, but it has a cost, a human cost, resource cost, energy cost. So there are many ethical questions behind it that are not usually addressed, and people are just in awe with the new GPT without necessarily asking also this kind of ethical questions. So I'll stop here and I'll let the other go on this.
Thanks, Jan. Kate is our ethics specialist here.
Yeah, this is an area that really concerns me. And again, it comes back to education. We need to be educating society. In my lens, it's the youth on, how is their data being used, how these machines are working, transparency, accountability, privacy, the biases, all of these subjects are so important to have a discussion around. We all have our own ethical values, each of us. So it's not black and white. And it's so interesting because, in history, again, my interest, we've separated the sciences and the arts, and our education systems have done that at an early age. Our children either go along the sciences or they go along the arts. And with artificial intelligence and the technologies, we need to be bringing in the education system these two back together again. Our kids need to be using, asking questions about how this technology is built. So the ethical area I'm really concerned about. We don't have the government regulations in place. It's moving too quickly. When the pandemic came in, technology consumed our classrooms and our communities and our children's education. So, they were using the Google platforms, the Microsoft platforms, and now those technologies are still in the classroom and taking our kids' data and using our kids' data without any regulation in place. So I think there's a lot that our governments need to be doing in place to oversee this. I completely agree with Jan on the human side of it. How is our data being trained is a question that is not asked enough, and we are repeating ourselves again if we're using the data and using the tools like ChatGPT to make decisions for us and to write texts. It's using content that is so biased already and hasn't been cleaned and isn't always right. And where are the minorities in the internet? Where are the discoveries that they made and the stories that they have to tell? Where is that in the internet? That won't come through when we ask ChatGPT a question. Who discovered X, Y, Z? It will tell you what's in what has been put in already. So how do we get our kids critically thinking and using other aspects in the education other than these tools? Just to add to what was being discussed about before about the pitfalls, I'm really worried that there will be that 95% of teachers who just don't engage, and that then means those are our kids who are not learning and understanding this. So we've seen this with our kids in classrooms around the world. Teachers are scared, they're not being taught, they don't have the resources, the systems are so fragile, and the majority of our kids won't get that education.
Thanks, Kate. I think Tina wanted to react also on the topic of ethics.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with everything that Kate has said, and it's really important for us when we talk about it with our students that ethics is always one of the big areas that they have to look at. And we have always been really supported by and supportive of the Mozilla Foundation MozFest, which was held in London for many years, unfortunately, until just before the pandemic. It's now an online festival. And they're very strong in the area of trustworthy AI. So we get a lot of sort of insight and inspiration from them. But also the speakers that we have come in to speak to our students. We're lucky enough to have people who are on the sort of cutting edge of implementations of AI in healthcare or education or business, but we, might be responsible for the safe and the responsible use of AI within that organization. So issues such as fairness and privacy and explainability come into it, so that the students are educated in that. For me, it's the divide as well. We're the National College for Digital Skills. We're founded to address the digital skills shortage, the digital skills gap, which unfortunately seems to just be getting wider. And so it's really important that we empower our students to be able to narrow that gap in the future. We want them to go on to great careers in technology, but those are not careers that will then hopefully, that they'll redress the bias that's out there. So unless they know about that and they understand that, that's a really important thing. So that gap as well, I've already mentioned it when I asked my students themselves who's using this, and if you're not, you are already falling behind, in a sort of joking way, because of course I'm going to support them all to use it, but it really worries me because we're going to be ahead of the curve, and I'm happy to share all of that with by other colleagues in other schools. But schools in the UK and around the world, we're so overworked and overwhelmed with the things we have to do. I can imagine a lot of schools, it's going to take them years to get on board with this, and we're just adding more disadvantage to the already disadvantaged, which, we just can't. That needs to be really at the forefront of what I'm thinking about with this all the time.
Great, thank you, Tina. We're nearing the end of our session. And for the last piece, we're just gonna talk to the panelists about their outlook. How will we learn and how will we teach in the next decade? And with that, you can merge in your take-home message for this session, each one of you. Who wants to start? Tina, maybe, while you have the floor.
Yeah, sure. So I think I've already sort of said it, that I'm so super excited about this. It's really reinvigorated my curiosity about technology and the next steps and that sort of thing. So, taking part in this panel has been a bit of the first step for me. This has really catapulted me into thinking about it. I'm really I think, it's going to be a great tool if it means I have to read less horrendously written reports. That's a big plus. But also if it means it takes that stress away from the students and makes them better writers. So I've got to really make sure that I'm teaching them to use that tool really well. Give them the skill to extract the best meaning out of that. And that's what I've been doing all along anyway, but I feel like this might just ratchet it up in a way that, endless practice hasn't in the past. After this panel, I'm going to host a similar thing with all of my colleagues, because of course I lead the sixth form. I have the apprenticeship team as well, who need to totally get on board with this, because if the sixth form students are using this, the apprentices are. And then it's the next step, which is to work with neighboring schools maybe who aren't as able to access the kind of technologies and things that they need, and won't be able to, might need we're going to build our own policy in conjunction with the students. We'll decide how it is that we're going to use it here at Ada, but I don't think all schools and colleges have the capacity to do that. So helping others to decide what that will be in their learning institutions, because banning it is, as far as I'm concerned, is not an option. That's I'm really surprised that the organizations who have come out with such a draconian measure. It's pretty shocking.
Thanks, Tina. Kate, would you like to go next?
Yeah, and I'm going to share a little anecdote similar to Tina, sharing where she is today. But when I started my digital moment, my background is in communications and literature. I studied literature, power of the word, power of communication is really where I started. And I had 3 young daughters in 2013, 3 girls going into the education system. And I thought, oh my gosh, if this is what our kids are learning, we have to do something, because this is not acceptable. They're not going to be prepared for the future. They're not going to be prepared to be engaged citizens. So coming to today, over 10 years later, my kids are still in school, 10 years older, but I'm bored. I read their stuff and I think, oh my God, seriously? Like, I'm falling asleep. So I think this is a moment to shake that up. And, it's hard as a mom to be able to be saying to the girls, go, you can do it, get it, enjoy school, love school, because I agree with them. It's boring. It's not engaging. It's, it just isn't grasping them. There's so much that can grasp them. And I think this is a moment to use ChatGPT and other tools to take some of that weight off what teachers are weighed down in, give them the space to now be more creative and engaging with these kids. They need to be chatting with each other, learning with each other, not just listening in these, siloed environments. So I'm really excited to see how this moves us into the next space of education and learning.
Great. Thank you, Kate. Alistair, would you like to go next? As a heads up, we're short on time, so
yeah, I'll keep it quick. First of all, I think there's a movement called the flipping the classroom movement that started a while ago, where instead of lectures during the day with a teacher who, as you said, Kate, is boring and repeating the same stuff, and then going home and doing homework, we now have the ability to get the best lecturer in the world, someone from Crash Course, to watch that at home or on the bus or whatever, and then do the activities in the classroom. That movement started decades ago, but we didn't have the pieces in place. I think it's going to happen whether you like it or not. The kid's going to go home and watch the video, and then the teacher's going to get shown up as like, well, I don't know how to help you with your homework because I no longer remember how to do the homework. The elephant in the room here is most teachers can't do the thing they're teaching, right? I mean, we all know this. A lot of teachers can't do the teaching. They can't sit down and solve the problem. They can teach it, but you can put a problem in front of them, they can't do it. So we're going to see this huge reversal. I think we're moving to an outcome economy as opposed to an attention economy, because attention is free. The reason our kids spend time on iPads is they can give the kid more attention than a parent can, no matter what. And now that attention is free in the form of technology and can be tailored to their learning, we will see the flipping of the classroom so that what happens in the classroom activities is the outcome, testing things, doing the work, seeing if the results are there, optimizing the results, and there will be no difference between the prototype you build in class and the thing you ship. And the question is going to be which of the thousands of things that students are producing every day as they enter this productive part of their lives is good, and that's the one that will be rewarded. So I think we need to go back and look at flipping the classroom in the context of ChatGPT, and we'll see what the future of learning looks like.
Finally happening. Thanks, Alistair. Ellie, you want to go next? I think you're on mute.
Yes, you're right. So I'll be quick. Thank you. So generative AI is a tool, and as a proverbial hammer, of course, you can use the tool to smash someone's school, but it's not what it's designed to do. So, like all tools, generative AI must be wielded with care. However, the potential is really tremendous. As a global, broadly transformative technology, it will impact virtually every aspect of how the world works. And as such, it makes even more obvious, if it wasn't already, already that computer science literacy and programming and algorithm literacy must be part of basic education for everyone. There is also this world of possibilities that we discussed, leveraging ChatGPT plus Cunningham's law or other similar approaches that really lower significantly the cost of producing targeted high-quality teaching material. Now, for schools specifically, it has a potential to facilitate access to knowledge, for example, as adaptive accessibility tools, to give tailored examples of explanations, including and specifically in the form of assistive technologies for struggling kids. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this unfolds in the next few months when we move past the wow phase.
Excellent. Jan, over to you.
Just in 2 words, I think one of the nice outlook that I'm really looking forward to is how when we have an open language model, I really insist on having this open shared model. Then I want to see how it can help upscale education, even in places where there are no teachers, not all the time, not all the day of the week. I think there is really the way to go upscales, and at least in school, one easy way to use it is that at least it's a fancy new entry point. If you have to teach hard material about machine learning and theorems and hard stuff, you start with ChatGPT, you create the wow effect, and then suddenly everyone is listening to you in the classroom, and that's at least something very easy to use it right now. And I think outside school, it has been said a lot. I think I really insist on that. I think it's part. Understanding a bit how it works and how this algorithm works, I think is part of to be a citizen that can have all his right and understand the society he or she is living on. I think it's mandatory to teach it to everyone in schools and outside schools, for all lifelong learner. I think it's really mandatory. And my final point, I started to say that I'm doing research on how language models can be used to biology, and I'm teaching language models in courses. And I really like that ChatGPT is really an interface between research and education. We can really see this as also education research at the same time as machine learning research. And to me, this is really exciting as well.
Beautiful. Any final word from our panelists today? Anybody, or have you said it all? Looks like we've covered quite some ground.
Just the words to say thank you to everyone. I've learned a lot, and so I really wanted to thank you for everything you said. That was really amazing.
Excellent transition for me to thank our panelists today for this excellent session. Thanks so much, Tina, Kate, Alistair, Jan, Ellie. That was wonderful. We all learned a lot, and I hope it was informative and interesting for our audience as well. Thanks for participating, and keep in touch. Thank you all.